Today, we are going to go ahead and smoke a full brisket. Show you just how it's done. Hey everybody, welcome to a wonderful foggy winter day in southern Florida. It's the middle of January and today we are going to smoke a 14.5 pound prime full packer brisket. Now most of the work in these briskets is in the trimming and the prepping and the seasoning of it. Then we pop it on the smoker and we just sort of check on it every hour, hour and a half until it's getting up to temperature. We'll wrap it, finish it out, and then we'll slice this thing up. Chances are it will be after dark before it's done, so you may very well see at the end of this video, I'm slicing it from inside the house after letting it rest. All right, let's show you what we do to get started. All right, so I've gone ahead and pulled this out of the package. Now, if you're not familiar with a brisket, I'll show you. This part over here is what they call the flat. Let's see if we can show this in a little easier way. This at the end is the point. You can do chopped beef out of this. You can certainly do brisket burn ends. This is the part that's usually used for slicing brisket. But what we want to do is we want to trim this up. We want to make it look sort of a good shape. Ideally, when it comes to this side, where the meat side is, we're going to try and trim all the fat off of this, get it just down to the meat, remove any of the silver skin that's on here. That's tough. And then we're going to flip this over, and on this fat cap side, we want to get this down to, let's say, 1/4 to 1/3, maybe a 1/2 inch thick. No thicker than that, definitely thinner. And then we're going to cut off some of the excess. We're not going to throw that away. We're going to save it all. We'll use that later. We can grind it up and use it in ground beef. We can make tallow out of it. There's a lot of things we can do with it depending on the type of fat it is. So let's get this trimmed up. And you want to just get a good boning knife or a nice thin knife. That's the ones I find easiest to use. Sharp is the important part of all that. And we really don't want any fat on this side, so take your time. You just don't know how thick the fat is. We don't want to cut down into the meat too much, so you want to go a little bit slow, just so you can see how thick you're actually leaving this stuff. By the way, there's a trick. If you're having a tough time sort of grabbing this stuff, just take you a dry paper towel and set it on there and use that to pinch it. You can get a much better grip that way. Now I'm cutting into the meat. I want to not go any deeper there. And even the silver skin here, where you can get this stuff off, you certainly want to run your knife down underneath there and try and pull that silver skin up and off of there. Let's zoom in. I'll kind of show you that up close. You know, here's a great example. You can't really tell how thick that is. You want to make small cuts and just see what you're looking at here. There you go. So that's a good amount to take off right there. Forgive me, I'm trying to do that with the other hand so you can see better. Now I want to go a little bit deeper here. I don't want to get into the actual meat though. Nice small cuts until I know how thick that really is. Here's another good example right in here. Yeah. See exactly what we have here. That's what we want to do. We want to pull that out, get that nice and down to the meat on this side. Let me just get the rest of this cleaned up. I'll tell you what, let me flip it, show you that side of it, and then we'll start getting the rest of it cleaned up. And we want to do the same on this side. Now you get some of this really loose fat here. We don't want all of this on. Some of this will render out for sure, but we don't want it dangling off of this as we're cooking it. So what we're going to do is we're going to kind of round these edges up real nice. There we go. Don't be afraid to maneuver this thing around so that you have a comfortable cutting style. All right, I think it's looking pretty good on this side. I'm going to clean up a little bit of the silver skin on the other side. You don't need every drop of this silver skin off, but if you've got a thick layer of it on this back side, you definitely want to pull it off of there. It will make the meat much, much, much more tender, and honestly, to let the seasoning kind of get down into the meat and not just stay on that silver skin that you end up when you cook, pulling off your piece and throwing away. So the last thing we want to do here is we want to sort of shape this. So I have these, look at these, see a good example. I have these little pieces that are dangling off. And then I also have some parts that look a little gray, just where it butchered and was exposed to a little bit of air. So I'm going to take this and sort of round this off just a little bit here. Way I don't have any sort of dangling pieces of meat there that would just burn and not really be that flavorful. I'm going to do the same thing over here. We're just rounding that off like this. I get this edge nice and cleaned up over here. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side because I have a bit of a unique edge there. Let's see, I'm going to flip it over so I can cut it a little bit easier. I'm trying to do this so you can see it on camera too. Now, the beauty of this is you can sort of shape the meat the way you want when you go to take your slice. There we go. Again, nice shape to it. All right, we now have a trimmed brisket. We probably have, gosh, 3 pounds maybe, 2.5 pounds of fat. We'll put that in the freezer for later. Let's go ahead and get this seasoned up, and then we'll let it rest. We want to let it rest just to start absorbing that seasoning into the meat while we get our smoker heated up. Now here's the beauty of this. Your seasoning, the way you season it, is 100% up to you. Do it the way you think you'll like the flavor. Now, one of the things I like to do is I like to go to the store and I like to buy different seasoning mixes to kind of see what's in them, see what I like. This PitBoss one's pretty good, though I will tell you I've used up all the PitBoss one and I've just started reusing this container. It's primarily salt, pepper, garlic. I usually put a little bit of paprika in it just for some beautiful color. I also have this one here that I've mixed up once before. This is probably about 40% salt, and then I have a little bit of, I never remember what this is called, Amaretto. It's a Hispanic spice that's a good red color. It helps give this beautiful, rich color to the bark. I also have black pepper in here and garlic. That is a really good seasoning. And then here's the thing I love. My little local Walmart sells these little bottles. A lot of times they're on sale. They'll be 50 cents. It's usually around holidays, Father's Day, Christmas, whatever. And I'll buy a whole bunch of these things just so I can try these different ones. This is Blues Hog Champion Blend. So I just have it out here to show as an example. And, you know, maybe in another 6 or 8 hours, maybe we'll put a little bit of barbecue sauce on it as well and let that sort of smoke onto there. So let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to start this out with my first example that I shared before. And again, you'll notice a lot of people will put mustard on here and they'll sort of rub it on and they call it the binder layer. The beauty of that is this is really moist. There's really no reason for it. This seasoning is going to stick to this just fine. And you can't taste the mustard on it, the binder, so just sort of no point in doing it from my perspective. All right, so I'm going to start up kind of high, which means I'm going to waste some of this because it's a little bit breezy out here today. Forgive me while I go around the edges here because you definitely want to season your edges too. This is a thick piece of meat, so it can withstand a lot of seasoning and not be overpowered from a seasoning perspective. So go liberally. And I say that as a guy who doesn't sell seasoning, by the way. So, you know, every time I hear somebody who is selling their own seasoning say, you want to use it liberally, I always wonder, do you? Or is that just the way you sell more seasoning? Anyway. I digress, folks. All right, so I don't want to rub this. I want to sort of pat it. Ultimately, what I'm wanting here is, as this meat begins to sweat and the salt that's in this seasoning extracts some of the moisture out of the meat, what we're going to see is this is going to start to sort of turn to like a mud layer almost. Okay, I'm going to flip this over. I'm going to do the same on this side. Now, you know that this side is the fat side. It's going to render down a lot, so the juices that it creates are going to be really flavorful and help soak into the meat. Now, if you do make your own blends, be sure you shake them up real good. What I have found is, you know, you set it in the pantry or whatever, and the thinner pieces, like the garlic, tends to settle toward the bottom, right? The thinnest diameter items. So mix it up. Also, you'll notice I'm touching this without gloves on. I've been touching the meat. I will absolutely wash the end of these before I put them away. We got to be safe. Now, this one, I have nice big chunks of kosher salt in here. So this is going to be good. We're going to do another layer on the other side as well. Again, we're just going to pat this. Some of it starts sticking to that moisture that's here. Back to this side. Look at that. You can already see it no longer looks dry. It looks sort of like mud. I always describe it as mud. And we're going to go ahead with a layer of this one on this side. This one has a little bit more salt in it. It'll help extract some of that moisture from the meat, which will help with this binded layer, this bark we're trying to create on the brisket. Yeah, salt kind of lets me see how much I'm putting out there. It looks a little bit like snow. All right, we're just going to let this sit. gonna go ahead and wash off my hands. We'll pull the smoker out here. Let's get that thing up to temperature. With this fog and the weather forecast saying that this afternoon it's going to be raining pretty heavy, I think I'm gonna leave the grill right up here underneath the eave of the house. Pellet smokers don't do phenomenally well in the rain. If rain and water gets in that pellet hopper, it sort of gets all the pellets like mud. So we'll fold this up, put it in the house so it doesn't get wet if it rains, and let's get this thing turned on and prepped. Because we're going to be doing a really long cook, I want to check and make sure that my fire pot doesn't have too many ashes in it. I don't want any problems or complications on a really long cook like this, and it's probably been about 3 cooks ago that I cleaned that out. So we're just going to pull out our grates real quick. And we are going to put our rack back on the top because we are going to cook this on the top rack. What we don't want is for this to be too close to the fire pit. Now I will say this grill's getting a little older, and my little fire grate is starting to get a couple little rust holes in it, so it's going to let more heat in. I will put a tray down here with water on it just so that I can kind of keep moisture into this and not have that flame coming directly up to the fat. Might be time to replace this down the road. You can also buy a new fire pot and a new cover. You know, probably $100 for that, so way cheaper than, you know, $600-700 for the grill. All right, let's get this turned on, and we're gonna go to 250 degrees. Now I'm gonna put this in with the fat cap side down. Be careful, it's gonna be hot. And I wanna put the thicker part closer to the left. That tends to be the hotter spot of my grill, and I know that because I have tested the temperature in different spots. All right, so we have, we'll move this over just a little bit. There we go. We're not touching the sides here. Whew. All right. Let's go ahead and get this closed down. Show you what we do with the pan in the bottom. All right, so I've got a pan here. I just put hot water in it, and I want to cool the grill down by putting cold in there. And I'm just going to slide this directly over the fire pot. And really, again, that's to dissipate heat and catch some of the fat as it drips in there. It's the only reasons. So we're gonna go ahead and close that up. The other thing is we wanna make sure we don't run out of pellets. This grill will run for, I don't know, 6-7 hours on a low temperature, but we're gonna top it off either way. All right. That's kind of filled up to where that hopper would be at the top of this. All right, we'll come back in about every hour or so. We'll check this and we'll spritz it. I will put a thermometer in it. I don't know, later on. I don't know if I'll do it now. It'll be easier to put in it. It starts cooking a little more. Every hour we just want to come in here and spritz this with a little bit of beef broth or water or all kinds of things you can do it with. All right, so this thing's been in for probably about 6.5 hours or so. Every hour and a half or so I'd come up here, open it up, and then I'd spritz the top of the meat with a little bit of beef broth in a spray bottle. And that's really just to help strengthen up the bark, right? You take that powdered seasoning and you continue to moisten it. It kind of thickens it up like a crust. Now I go ahead and I put meter probes, little electronic probes that you can get. It kind of connects to your Wi-Fi, connects to your phone. It's kind of nice. I can tell it that I'm making a brisket, and I can see right in here, you know, you can see that I have probe number 1 in the flat. I have probe number 2 in the thickest part of the point, and I have probe number 3 right in the center. So I set this for about 165 degrees at the time I wanted to wrap it up. You can do that anywhere from like 150 to 170 degrees. So we can see that the probe number 1 that's in the flat, the slicing part of the brisket, is sitting at 154 degrees. So good enough to wrap. The one in the middle and at the point are both over that. So I've got one at 166 and one that's reading 174. I probably have the thermometer in a little bit of a fat pocket in there. But what we'll do is we'll pull this out. We'll lay it out on the board. We'll wrap it in some butcher paper. And then we'll go ahead and put it back in until everything gets up to around 205 degrees. That's when any of the fat will render down. And then we're just going to let it sit in a cooler for a good hour, hour and a half, and let it just rest. Let those juices flow back into the meat. So let's go ahead and pull this out and get it wrapped up behind me. All right, I've got my big cutting board over here, and what I like to do is just set this right here, kind of lean my body on it so I hold it, and then we're just going to go ahead and pick this up. Again, make sure you're using some good heat-proof gloves. That's why I love these things. We're just going to pull this right out of here and set it on our board. Carry this right over to our table. Making a mess here. I don't want to get juices on the bottom of the cutting board. All right, I'm going to close this up. We'll get zoomed in over here and we'll get this wrapped up. All right, we've got a nice roll of our butcher paper here. I am going to go ahead and pull my probes out of here, and I'm going to set them right where I know which numbers they are. Again, 1's in the flat, 2 is in the point, and 3 is in the center of this thing. Move this aside for just a moment while I cut my paper. All right, just gonna set that right there to hold it in place while I get my whole package. Just want enough to tuck that under, and you'll see what I'm doing here. That way, I get a nice sort of easy way to fold this up. Now, I can also take these gloves off to make it a little easier. Now, you just want to wrap it kind of tight the whole way. So tucking that under. I'm gonna take this part here, I'm gonna fold it this way. We'll do the same over here. And again, we're going to fold. Do this where I can handle it a little easier this way. Same thing, we're now going to fold this guy right over one more time. We've got our fat cap down, and we're just going to go ahead and put this right back in the smoker. I'm going to get my probes again. We're going to open that up, and we're going to go ahead and put this right back in. Now the difference is we're still going to cook it fat side down, but we're going to turn it around now and put the thin side on the left this time versus on the right. All right, with that wrapped, we're going to go ahead and close it. We're going to bring this now up to about 202 to 210 degrees. That's when it's going to be fall apart tender in the point and perfectly sliceable on the flat end. So we'll check this out every hour and a half or so. Just make sure all of our temperature probes are reading right. We'll pull this off as soon as it hits that 205. Okay, so it's a little late. It's about 10:30 p.m. and I really wanted this thing to cook low and slow, and that's exactly what I did. So I am about to pull this off the smoker now. It's finally got to about 206 degrees in the flat and about 203 degrees in the point. It's going to be ready to pull out, but I certainly want to rest it. I want to rest it for a couple hours. Typically, I would put it in a cooler, put maybe a wet towel over the top of the wrapped meat. Because it's so late, I'm ready to go to bed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring it inside. I'm going to put it on a cookie sheet, and I'm going to put it in our lowest small oven we have in the house and just let it sit there overnight. I get up at 5 in the morning. I'll come check it out first thing in the morning. We'll show you what it looks like. All right, let me show you what it is. It looks like in the stove here, in the grill. Let me show you what it looks like in the grill and see if you can even see this as dark as it is. Actually turn the lights on the back of the house just so I can see into the smoker. With the lights on, we can certainly see it. I still have some juice down in there. I've been adding water to this, and you can see this thing looks really good. So let me go ahead and get my my little gloves on here and pull this off. Okay, I just put the brisket into the lower oven. It's a nice small oven. It'll stay in there. It'll hold the temperature. It's actually 11:22. I just said 10:30 on the video a second ago. Didn't realize it was quite this late. So it's 11:22. I'm gonna leave it sitting here. You wanna let it rest for anywhere from an hour and a half to 3 hours. It's gonna be some, let's call it 2:33 in the morning. I'm gonna go to sleep. I usually get up at 5:30, 6 o'clock. I'll come out and check it out then. By that time, all the juices will have incorporated back in. We'll slice it up and check it out. Well, I know for you it's just been a second, but good morning. It is the next morning. I was tired last night when this finally got done. Now, I think everybody knows this is the flat end over here, and this is the point. This is a single muscle. It's usually used for the slicing of the brisket. This is where you end up with two muscles kind of sitting on top of each other. So we want to slice it about halfway up here. Now, I'm a left-handed guy, so I'm going to turn this around, and we want to go against the grain on the flat part. So let's do this here. Tell you what, I'm going to take one of these gloves off. Another trick here is you can take this corner piece here. This is an amazing piece of meat right here. Look at that. Absolutely delicious looking. This is perfect for burnt ends, but this is the slicing side of the brisket, so really, really lean. So it's a little bit drier from just sitting all night, but you got this beautiful smoke ring, nice set of slicing brisket right down there, and a little bit of the fat on that bottom. That is going to be an amazing flavor right there. You want a nice sharp knife. I know some people like to use a serrated knife. I do not. I like these brisket knives. I think they cut it a little bit easier. It is better to do this when it's still a little bit warmer. Obviously, because I wanted to go to sleep last night, I got lazy. But I'm going to kind of show you this because you can really see just how tender this is. So now you can see we're definitely starting to get into these two slices, these two different sort of fat pieces here. Now what we want to do is we want to turn this and we want to begin cutting it in this direction. You want to go against the grain, and this would be very chewy and stringy if we tried to leverage that in the same direction. So I am going to start on this side. There's a bit of fat over here, so let's kind of check it out for a moment here and see what it looks like. Now you want to start cutting these just a little bit thicker because this is a more fatty piece with more rendered fat between it. It will break up a little bit easier. So if you cut it really thin, you're just going to basically shred this. Now you'll see a lot of places will tell you, you want to cut this about as thick as your thumb. I prefer to get it a little bit thinner than that. And you can also take this and just separate these two pieces. By the way, this can still remain an amazing piece of sliced brisket, and then just use this part for chopped brisket. Now, actually, let me show you that. So it really is simple. You can just follow that rendered fat line right down the meat. I'm going to clean this up for a minute. Let me just move this piece. This is the chopped barbecue side. Give me a second while I move that out of the way. Now, I'm going to trim some of this out of here because we don't want this on the flat part for sure. You can go right back to slicing this like we did that first part of the sliced brisket side. Watch. Listen, you know the drill. I mean, the next part here is the taste test. The first thing I'm going to do is grab some of these little tiny bites like this. To me, that's like meat candy. It's got some of that fat on it that's been rendered down. Very lean piece of meat, specifically with the flavor on the outside. Absolutely amazing. Again, beautiful ring, nice bark on the top, a little bit of the fat down below. I probably could have trimmed just a tad more off of that. But what I like about this is when you pull it, you can see how all the grains separate. This is an amazingly tender piece of meat. Absolutely amazing. That's it. Safe and happy grilling, everybody. We'll see you later.